Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Here to do it's probably I might do more than one of these, but I did the Pub Meeple for the independent films. I mentioned this in a previous video, at least one or two. I love movies, love an independent film, especially when it was like the mid to late 90s. I mean, it was before that too, I would say even, but mid to late 90s, probably when I finally like moved out on my own and was able to get cable and I got independent film channel. I don't know if because I had it. I may have had it with my parents actually. It was before I moved out actually because I had my own cable account at one point. Anyway, I became kind of attracted, invested, very independent film, smaller budget but more artsy film where it wasn't cliche as predictable. It wasn't about effects necessarily. Granted, I love movies with effects too. Grew up watching Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and that a lot of the movies with Wizard of Oz even effects for their time. But I found a home, or at least I found part of my passion for movies and film, the whole synonymous terminology, pictures, to be in the independent film industry, and then being subscribing to independent film channel, then end up later going to some festivals and frequenting some of the theaters, the landmark theaters here in Minneapolis, where they're national. We had a few of them. There's one. Technically, there's only one active. Well, yeah, I get. Look, I guess there's two because they reopened Edina. But anyway, so and I became kind of invested among other my other interest in movies, the independent film industry, um, and probably for a good at least a decade there. I was maybe more like 15 years. It was really when I met my wife. I kind of reduced my consumption, my viewing of independent films. But I have my favorite actors and directors in Hollywood and in independent film that did a lot of that kind of stuff. Um, and I've always felt like if I had more time, I would invest more time into that because I feel like it's an escape from other stuff when I'm too consumed by it, like music even, and like sports or other things. Just it was even like at my job, we had a situation. My present employer, we had a deal many years back where we could, if we did a certain amount of production, we could actually leave by it was like depending on when your start time was, but for me it was like 12:30 maybe. It's like 12:30, 1 o'clock at the latest, and we get paid for our full shift, but it was like this incentive thing. And I would frequently try to go to matinees at like Lagoon Theater in Minneapolis, the landmark theaters. And then I get like advance passes and stuff like that, advance emails for that whole thing. You still can do that, but it's more through the larger theaters like Fandango. So anyway, babble on too much about my story. I just want to get into the movies, what people might be interested in seeing. So, I got 21 movies. Hopefully, I can get through all of them. I meant to do this in more than one. I may still, and I may eventually do the movies of the year thing, which will be fun. But I just wanted to do this. So, my favorite movie outside of the Wizard of Oz, but still is probably used to be Wizard of Oz, is Ghost World, the Daniel Klaus graphic, based on the Daniel Klaus graphic novel, Terry Zwigoff directed film from 2000 or 2001 actually. And I have multiple versions of it. I don't have the Blu-ray, which is almost sacrilege given it is my favorite movie, but Scarlett Johansson, of course, way before people knew who she was for the most part. Steve Buscemi, great in it. And of course, Thora Birch, probably her best work. Although she did some other things I really like, but yeah, this was the Criterion edition. So, but it kind of speaks to me on many levels. It's kind of anti-establishment. The Steve Buscemi character specifically, Seymour, they would portray him different in the graphic novel than um in this movie. That's more expanded. He's a record collector, kind of the guy who can't really have success with women. So I'm here sitting in the similar situation. I didn't collect records, but he's kind of a music snob in some ways. But at heart, he's still just a nice guy who deserves better. That's part of what appealed to me about his character. But just some of the writing, it's some of the pop culture references, some of the lines. But anyway, Ghost World. I've seen it. I don't know how many times, probably over 100 times, and independent film that kind of reached a wider audience after it went on DVD and they showed it on Independent Film Channel. So, all right, I'm just gonna go through this. These are not in alphabetical order, so I'm just gonna go through these. So, here's a movie from I want to say it was the mid or late '90s that I believe I caught on IFC called Clock Watchers with Parker Posey. Parker Posey became, and not so much entirely fully for that, but an independent film darling. She was in several movies. I don't didn't have it on the list. I didn't even have it in the Pub Meeple ranking I did, but she was in a movie called Party Girl, which I liked, and she's done a few others too. But this might be her best performance. But it's an ensemble cast. It also has Lisa Kudrow. Probably just not that long after Friends had started. Yeah, this came out in '99, so it was in that window of time. But it's a bunch of four women that have an office job basically as temps. I think they at least are newly hired in this office job doing clerical work. Again, kind of speaks to me to some ways. They bond together, but it kind of exposes. It's a little satirical toward corporate America, bureaucracy, and capitalism to some degree. But sarcasm and wit is very. I mean, it's. I got Office Space, but I'm not going to show it in this video. I'm going to talk about it in maybe another video. It's kind of like Office Space in some ways, but it's not maybe as over the top, and it's obviously not written by Mike Judge. It was written, directed by who? I should even know this. I should know who did this, what they went on to do actually, as a movie that I really like, but it doesn't. Let's see. I'm looking here. Of course, they have it at the bottom. Executive producer John Fioc or something like that. Fiock. Uh, Written by Jill Sprecher, Sprecher. It also has Tony Collette, and I forget the fourth main star. What she didn't. She went on to do a few movies. She was in a movie with Danny DeVito called The Renaissance Man. I remember Alana Ubach. But yeah, I mean it's very relatable for people that work in bureaucracies and called clock watchers. So here's another one that I think I did catch this on. I had to have caught it on. It's called Way Downtown. It's caught it on IFC probably early 2000s as well. It's kind of it's based. It was set in Canada. I want to say like Calgary, um, and it's based on. It came out maybe it was mid 2000s. Yeah, what year was like 2005, 2006? I was writing the years down when I was putting my list together, but I don't have it in front of me right now. Because I remember when The Office, the American version of The Office came out, I was thinking, actually, it says 2000. I was thinking it was a little bit later. That this movie kind of does what The Office doesn't do, and that's why I liked it more. But what the premise is, there's a bunch of people at this office, or at this workplace, that's within an enclosed mall in Calgary. And they're having some sort of competition where I'm not sure what the winner gets besides bragging rights, but they all can't go outside. They're yeah, it's like their homes. Yeah, their homes are like connected to that office they work in, um, through like tunnels and everything. So I don't know, even like their cars and stuff were underground parking. All I know is that all of them they're not supposed to. Part of the premise is they weren't supposed to ever go outside. So they weren't breathing in like fresh air, which is you could say ultimately not that healthy. But it's again satirical. It's very kind of there's one point where this guy is like stapling something to his tie. The star of it, I know he was on in like an episode of like Angel at one point. Fabrizio Filippo, like Italian name, but it's very subtle. It's almost like yeah, like The Office or like Superstore in the humor and like it's not so overtly slapstick, but it's creative and very clever. There's a scene where they have to take something for the boss out of a store because the boss needs to get it's like some sort of gift for their boss, but they had to like steal it. There are all these different little nuances within the ensemble cast, but I think it's mostly Canadian actors because I don't recognize any of these people. Fabrizio Filippo is the only one I really saw in anything else that I know of. But I think there was one. I think the girl that was in Sabrina the Teenage Witch, not Melissa Joan Hart, but one of her friends, I forget her name, was in this. Redheaded, kind of curly hair. But yeah, this is a sort of an underground gem. I love this movie way downtown. So, um, all right, let's just see here. So the next one I have is a film, a documentary of sorts. It's sort of a modified documentary, and this was kind of a type of film that was done, especially in the 2000s. It's continued to do of like sort of it's like a mockumentary of sorts, but it's sort of based on a lot of real events. It's called King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. So it's sort of a play on words on like that Japanese, I want to say, film from like the 70s, 60s or 70s, like martial arts. Um, but King of Kong is referring to the video game Donkey Kong and this sort of fixation, obsession, and addiction that a few people like got people, kids or adolescents and young adults had in the 80s for arcade games, and specifically it was Donkey Kong the game, and they had competitions and there was footage. So they some of it was like archive footage, film footage people had, and it ultimately comes down to like these two guys sort of having it out, and one guy is sort of portrayed as the villain, the other guy is sort of the protagonist you're kind of rooting for. He has a kid and stuff, and he has like the console at home he eventually gets to try to like win this competition against the other guy. I mean, that's what I'm saying is like it's footage of the video game competitions, the arcade game competitions, and with Donkey Kong, and talking about like trying to win it. It was like a points thing. I don't think time was the real competition, but and they even had a guy who played like a referee. Um, so I mean, a lot of it was footage. Some of it I think was edited as in a certain way to be dramatic. But as you can see, there's the ref and everything. But it's good. I mean, someone who was a kid of the '80s who played arcade games, would go to the malls, Showbiz Pizza, Chuck E. Cheese, you name it. Donkey Kong. I even had the little Donkey Kong plastic portable with batteries game that I played when I was a kid. My parents gave that to me for Hanukkah one year, I think. My brother got Pac-Man. But yeah, it was a probably more compelling documentary than you'd expect. Just a documentary about a couple guys playing arcade games. It's more than that. Actually, it's more of like the culture. It kind of feeds into the I don't have Trekkies on here. The Trekkies nerd culture stereotype documentary series, but anyway. So along that same lines, the next one I'm going to show is a movie called Free Enterprise, and it includes the services of William Shatner. It's a play on words of William Shatner. It's a movie that is based on basically two guys, two friends, science fiction comic book friends that wanted to sort of get into Hollywood, and they end up meeting, and they're also just trying to find success with women, the nerd culture. It stars Eric McCormack and Rafer Weigel, also, and Audie was Englund, I think, is the female lead. But it was written and produced by two main guys based on their lives. Robert Meyer Burnett, who's gone on to do a lot of stuff in Hollywood, more like sort of behind the scenes, behind the camera. He's written a few other things. He was going to make a sequel to this, but it's pretty. It's kind of like a proto Big Bang Theory in some ways, but I mean they meet Shatner at a bookstore. They're going to help him. Like they want to get help from him how to like have success with women, but then it turns out it's the other way around. That Shatner kind of needs their help in the long run. But there's a lot of science fiction references, sort of the debate between is the science fiction the thing you love, or do you want to actually find love or romance? It's kind of what happens in throughout the course of the Big Bang Theory TV series as well. But in fact, there's one episode of the Big Bang Theory. They go to the comic book store frequently. There's one episode of the Big Bang Theory, which is an absolute either homage slash ripoff to the premise of the beginning, toward the beginning of this movie, where they go to this comic book store, and Rafer Weigel's character has been looking for, I don't know what it was. Was it an X-Men or Captain America issue that was rare? And there's this woman there who wants it also. They're both looking for it, and I can't remember. They agreed to like share it, they said, and he's like, I know that, you're buying this for your boyfriend or something like that. That's what he says to her, Rafer Weigel's character. And she's like, no, I happen to like this. I'm going to go home and read this while I take a bath and have a glass of wine. So, um, but yeah, it's very relatable from a standpoint of someone who likes science fiction, Star Trek. They have the debate between Star Wars and Star Trek at some point. I feel like this movie, in some ways, did the sort of um, the nerd sci-fi parody satire better than several other movies. One of them was a show which I like, but I thought this is still better. Um, and it's too bad because, like I said, Robert Meyer Burnett and the other guy, Eric McCormack plays him. Rafer Weigel. And this is right before Will and Grace. So Eric McCormack wasn't as high profile at the time. Most people don't like Eric McCormack. I can take or leave him, but I think he's pretty good in this. But he got involved in his character's involved in the film industry. But Rafer Weigel, ironically, had gone on to actually be like a news or weather anchor in like San Diego in real so. But he was maybe trying to get involved in acting. Oh, it has Phil LaMarr too. That with for the Prague fans, there is a scene. Phil LaMarr, comedic black actor. Um, they're going to Walmart or something like that. It wasn't the comic book store, but they're walking from their car to the store, and he goes, "I can't believe the radio station didn't play a song from Yes's Tales from Topographic Oceans." It was like if any movie references something like that, I'm in. And it's happened before and since, even on the Jeffersons, of course. Um, uh, George Jefferson plays Nectar music, and what's his name? The guy who played George Jefferson became the late Sherman Helmsley. He was a huge prog fan himself, but yeah. So it has the prog rock reference included. I mean, I was like, this is for me. This speaks to me. So all right, so here's another one from the 2000s. That was like 99 actually. Free Enterprise. Of course, the Enterprise are referencing Star Trek, and I've never really heard about like Blade Runner and Logan's Run. Especially, I think they referenced Logan's Run. I didn't know how big of a movie Logan's Run was, and I got into that, and I got into the TV series many years later. But this movie came out in the mid 2000s, and there were a few other movies like this that did the sort of time, like Back to the Future included, changing the timeline, time travel kind of thing. But this movie kind of went under the radar. It's called The Jacket, and it stars Adrian Brody, where he's I think he was like an Iraq War vet coming back, but he has to go through some kind of therapy with Chris Christopherson, the late Chris Christopherson, sadly, and Jennifer Jason Lee. And of all people who show up and even make a cameo in this movie, one Derek Dick Fish from Marillion, he was trying to get involved in acting, getting an acting career somewhat in the early to mid 2000s, and he showed up briefly in this, but it's creative the way Keira Knightley and Jennifer Jason Lee is in it, but Keira Knightley is the other sort of lead actress that he meets and changes time. He's put into this like straight jacket. That's why it's called a jacket, but and into this cell or something like that. At like a like it's not a halfway house, um but he ends up going back in time and then changing what happens and eventually comes back and then things have changed. It's back and forth. Kind of like The Butterfly Effect, kind of like Donnie Darko. Two movies that are also among my favorite. I would consider independent films somewhat, but I consider The Jacket probably to be my favorite. But yeah, really well done, really creative, very surreal, very kind of escapist. It's almost like if you could change reality, would you do it for the better? Would it turn out better? But I haven't seen this in a long time. I could go for seeing it again. It was actually produced by George Clooney, which reminds me, some of the Clooney stuff, I don't know if they're because he had so much money would be considered independent, but yeah, The Jacket. I saw that at Advanced Screen at the Mall of America. I remember that. And what was it? The Time Traveler's Wife was also compared to it, which it wasn't quite as rapid. Time Traveler's Wife happens. They're going back and forth in time frequently, but slightly similar premise. So here's a movie that I caught on IFC. I want to say, yeah, many times in the early days, and it includes, it's called Palookaville, and it stars Vincent Gallo. Now, I have another Vincent Gallo movie that I don't know if I included on this particular video list, but we'll probably. But the DVD, of course, doesn't have any artwork that I'm aware of. But it's this is a I would call it mostly a sort of a comedic drama or dramedy, I guess you could say. Um, Vincent Gallo and then some of his friends are they end up coming up with a premise to rob a bank. It wasn't to rob like to rob not a bank, but like a armored car that the bank carries cash for. That's part of the premise. It's not only about that, but the irony is that Vincent Gallo's like brother is a cop in their town. So he has to find a way to do it without, you know, um his brother even knowing about it. His brother like hates him. Him and his brother are at odds. His brother would probably turn him in if the easiest chance he could get. But there's one part of this movie that's hilarious where they're trying to get like a service for like elderly people that shop for groceries to give them like carpool rides because they don't want to always take the bus. It takes them longer. I forget. It wasn't actually Vincent Gallo's idea. It has Frances McDormand. I forgot about that. William Forsythe, who's showed up in some Tarantino. It is kind of a Tarantino-esque movie in some ways. And of course, Tarantino got really big with movies like Pulp Fiction and even Reservoir Dogs, some of the movies he did after that. It's kind of, it's like they want to be a mob, but they're not a mob. It's like a comedic mob in some way. It's almost like a parody of mob movie, but on a much smaller scale. Um, and unfortunately, Vincent Gallo's career after the like early 2000s, especially with the Brown Bunny movie, kind of dovetail like nosedived. But this was among the stuff I thought he really did. I liked. Yeah, it's funny. It's really more satire and comedic than the drama. Like it doesn't get super dark a little bit, but um, anyway, I forget who the love interest with Vincent Gallo. Adam Tresse is one of the other people in it. And I saw it probably 5 or 6 times on IFC. I'm like, what is that movie, Palookaville? And I haven't seen it probably in 20 years. All right, so here's a more recent entry on. I haven't even opened this sucker. I should do that right now. It's a movie called Blinded by the Light. I've been, a friend of mine, um, uh, people know on the Mike Portman Forum, known as Weymouth. He does a radio show on Wild Out Radio every week. He played a song from uh, Born to Run, Thunder Road, which is Thunder. When I got into Bruce Springsteen, I totally loved that song. That was one of the songs. I mean, Jungleland even more so, um, but just this movie is called Blinded by Light. I want to say it came out 4 or 5 years ago, like 2019. It's the premise of like an East Indian kid, like adolescent or late teens, early 20s, who find actually no, he's in high school. So it's like in late. It's based on a real story. Like the guy it's based on, like the writer, maybe the director, the writer, where he found Springsteen like in the 80s, from a coworker. He's an East Indian guy who's British in some part of England, and it uses Springsteen's music really well. I mean, I almost feel like if you don't know, you don't like Springsteen, you could still enjoy this. Um, because the lyrics speak to him and everything like that. It's like why are you liking the boss? It's like well he's the boss. It's like that you'll be and then they have these sequences where they show the movie like the different songs with the lyrics in the back of the wall. A lot of his hits, a lot of the stuff from Born in the USA and some stuff from I want to say The River and uh Darkness on the Edge of Town. But yeah, it's just a terrific. I mean, I'm a Springsteen fan, so that helps. But I've always contended that my wife probably wouldn't even enjoy it. And she don't like Springsteen at all. But Blinded by the Light, one of the best independent films of the last, say, whatever it's been, 6 years, 10 years, you could say. So here's another one from the 2000s, kind of late 2000s, called Wrist Cutters, which it's kind of the premise is people that want to want to die, want to commit suicide, but it's like set sort of in purgatory. It stars Patrick, um, the guy Patrick Fugit, who is most known for Almost Famous, the kid. But it has some other people. It has of all people, um, Alexandra. Was she listed? No, Shannon Sossamon. Shannon Sossamon, who actually was the band Warpaint, the all female band now, was the original drummer, and her sister, Jenny Lee Lindbergh. I want to say that. I was gonna. Is it Jenny Lee or Teresa Wyman? One of the. I think it's Jenny Lee's sister. Um, but Shannon Sossman was. I think she might have been the drummer of Warpaint initially. But then she pursued her acting career and she couldn't do the music. But she's in that, Shannon Sossman, and then also has the main guy uh, from Gogo Bordello. His name Mikhail Portnoy Lazarev, maybe the singer. Also has John Hawkes, Tom Waits, a bunch of other people show up in it. Leslie Bibb, who showed up, I want to say, in some like Apatow movies and stuff. Um, but yeah, it's sort of like they're in purgatory. Like it's like you're supposed to. They somehow Patrick Fugit's character, I know, he's kind of down on his luck and he's like thinking of taking his life, but then he ends up wandering off and finds this place that of other people in the same boat, but realizes, he shouldn't do it. So he's kind of, I don't know, he's not really subconscious. He's actually in purgatory. It's a movie I haven't seen because it came out in like 2009, 2006 actually. It's been, yeah, so it's almost been 20 years. I could go for seeing it again. I should watch this. Remembering exactly how where the story arc ends, but I know that part of it was that they didn't really want like people that were regretting taking their own life. That's where they were kind of caught, so they could go back just to normal reality, or they could die. But they don't know what's going to happen, so they're having second thoughts about doing it. But yeah, it's like in a town. So anyway, all right. So here's the second actually. Um, I believe Daniel Klaus based film on this list, Wilson, which was filmed not entirely but large some of it right in my neighborhood in the state of Minnesota. Where the case hasn't really held up, but Woody Harrelson. I have the graphic novel. They have a sign for it at Day by Day Cafe in the background, the poster. But it was filmed, and I met Woody Harrelson back in it was like 2015, the summer, and they were filming right around this area that I live for several weeks in 20. It was probably because this came out. I think was it 2015? I want to say it was like 2017, but they were filming it in like 2015. But the Wilson guy is sort of a curmudgeon, middle-aged guy. Woody Harrelson I've always liked, but he's a pretty rangy actor, so he was able to pull it off for the most part. The only thing is I always pictured Wilson being a little bit older than him even in this movie. Wilson being like in his 60s or 70s. Woody Harrelson's probably like early 50s when he did this. I'm not sure how old he was exactly, but it has Laura Dern, some other people. I know because I didn't meet Laura Dern. Judy Greer is also in it, who's been in a million movies, including many independent films, many TV shows too. Character actors, been in tons of stuff. But he's a guy who's sort of he's like kind of also trying to find his middle age crisis basically. But ultimately, he kind of concludes that the people that were around him were actually worse than him. So it kind of makes his life more uplifting than you'd think. Um, because there's one scene you have, I think it might be, was it not Jordan? It wasn't Laura Dern. One of the other female actors in it, the woman who's like was with RFK Jr. Who I met. She was a complete asshole. She was a complete bitch in this at least one or two scenes. Like her with her sister. I think it's with Laura Dern's. I think they're sisters, if I remember correctly. I mean, it's not an exact like copy of the graphic novel, and that's the whole point. Same thing with Ghost World. Daniel Klaus would not have written the screenplay for this thing if he was going to make an exact like storytelling adaptation on of the graphic novel. He changed some things like he did with Ghost World and some others. So it's good. I mean, it's not amazing. I guess as a Daniel Klaus fan, I have my bias, and I ultimately could say, well, it didn't come out maybe as amazing as I hoped. Again, the personal bias being filmed here, but it's still good. So let's see here. So yeah, let me I may have to just cut this short and do a second video next week with this list I made because so here's another one that I love from the mid 2000s. A personal, very surreal movie. I saw this. I have a memory going down to Lagoon Theater to see it, called The Science of Sleep with Gael Garcia Bernal, who's one of he's done several movies that I enjoyed, but this to me is the best thing he did. He did Y tu mamá también. He's probably most well known for that, but and it also features the daughter of the guy from Air, uh, who Charlotte Gainsbourg, who hasn't done. She's also got like a music career, of course, but so part of this is in French. The Science of Sleep. It's part of it's like the dialogue is in French and then English. But it's very surrealistic. It's Michel Gondry who did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He's had basically a career of he did music videos too for many bands, but using like objects and manipulating sort of manipulating space and like I wouldn't call it graphic arts. Um, it's not Photoshop exactly. He's always been very creative with objects and showing them kind of being animated, basically animating them sort of in reality. But some of this stuff is like there's a part where he has his hands, like one of the guys. It's in one of the Gallagher Supernell's dreams. His hands are really big. The premise is he lives in Mexico, but like his mother, he grew up in Mexico, I believe, but his mother like passes away. His mother lived in France. Maybe it's his father. I forget, one of the two. I should know this. It's one of my favorite movies. So he has to go back to France to like make ends meet with his with her estate and stuff like that. If I'm not mistaken, maybe he has a reason to go back to France. He ends up meeting Charlotte Gainsbourg's character. He ends up going to work at this like I think that's what he just went back to see his mother actually, and he goes to this like business. He's working there and he meets some guys. It's like a photo. He has like this artwork or like not it's not it's like artwork but like it's like papers, big posters and stuff like that. He wants to be able to sell or promote and do it, get his own business. But some of it is very dreamy, and I guess you could say it's sort of a coming of age story where he's like like mid 20s guy who is trying to figure out what he's going to do with his life professionally and romantically, and he's kind of there's a girl he likes, but then he meets Charlotte Gainsbourg character, and it's like, you know what, I don't like her because like it was like her friend. If I'm not mistaken, she has a friend, and I like you better. Unfortunately, there's one scene at the end where she kind of confesses something to him. However, it doesn't actually hold true ultimately in the premise, where he likes her and like she admires him, but she can't admit it to him. But then when, he tells her that, she kind of rejects him. Like, but you need to find yourself, that kind of thing. But in truth, and it's sort of the hopeless romantic in me kind of relates to that, but also is sad by that why didn't she, go for him? But that's too easy. But the other association, the whole manipulating of objects with animated objects. There's like one like a unicorn, like a wind up unicorn that you see basically going on the floor and it ends up hitting a wall and going around. Um that I associate with the band Mew. And it's weird how there's a ton of Mew fans that love this movie. And I also associate when going to see this movie, I think of um Apocalypso or a couple of songs on the Glass Animated Kites going to see it. I have like reoccurring visions. It's not dreams, but visions. And it's interesting the science of sleep. There's even a sequence where he's like doing a talk show and playing drums. He's analyzing what happens in your sleep. So you could say that it's called the science of sleep because, half the movie is basically in his subconscious. But yeah, I mean, there's tons of dream sequences in it. So trying to understand reality versus what is in his dreams is half the battle or half the enjoyment, half the ride. But it's a super creative movie. I suppose it's esoteric in a sense. Some people be like, this is kind of nonsensical, and it's just people that like linear stories, like my wife. I always thought that she might enjoy this, but actually, now thinking about it, she'd probably be more annoyed by it than enjoy it. But anyway, I think that's about it. I think I'll go on to I'll do another video the next group, but yeah, you can see I have a huge passion for these types of movies that are underground but very artsy and very creative, very film for film's sake, film acting for acting's sake, very inspiring. And I found tons of them. These are some of the favorites, but there's like I said, I had a list of 182, and that's not. I was thinking a lot of movies I didn't include on there. So But anyway, that's about it for now. I'll try to do more next week and try to get back to the A to Z. But thank you for watching. Also, Hotel the Laughing Tree, the new album came out today. I'll maybe get a review out next week if I can do that. But thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.